Chapter 23, February 18th, 1943, Road to Warsaw. The road we were walking on was as beautiful as any place in Poland. Vast acres of farmland reached to the horizon on every side of us, covered in untouched snow with patches of trees laced with ice. The sun was sinking fast, coloring the snow in a sea of red and deep purple. But the open beauty also made this area very dangerous. There was nowhere to hide here. Even the trees, barren of leaves, became cruel teases for safety. From one viewpoint, we might be impossible to spot from the road, but if the angle changed, we'd be betrayed. As beautiful as the sunset was, tonight we needed the darkness. What now? Beside me, Esther walked slower and slower, and she'd begun shivering. I was sure her feet had as many blisters as mine, each step sending prickles of pain up my calf. We'd been going almost non-stop since Whit dropped us off earlier this morning. I didn't know how far we'd come, only that my mind had become numb to distance. No matter how much road we left behind, it continued to unfold endlessly ahead. A dog began barking from a farmhouse we were passing. Maybe the owner would invite us in for warm cider and something to eat. Maybe not. Probably not. Shadows of a large man crossed in front of the home's candlelit window, and we hurried away from its glow, taking comfort in the shadows and the safety of approaching darkness. "I feel like a criminal," Esther said, glancing back at the light. "I suppose that's what we are. These days it is a crime to be Jewish, to have been born." I barely felt the weight of my own words. What did right and wrong matter in a world that had been turned upside down? One in which the murder of innocents was the law, and defense of those same innocents was punishable by death. I smiled over at Esther, adding, "If we have no other choice, then let us be proud criminals, honorable criminals, and criminals who will die one day knowing that we did everything we could to disrupt the peace." She laughed, though it started the dog barking again. She quickly muffled her laughter, and we picked up our pace, getting as far as we could from anyone who might see us out here, just like criminals. "Tell me a story," I said, "something from before the war." "I don't want to. Something pleasant. We need the distraction. Please, Esther." It took her a long moment of thinking before she finally began. "All right, well, when I was 8 years old, my school had a large oak tree in the yard, an enormous, beautiful tree that begged to be climbed. The branches were perfectly placed, if you could get to the lowest one. They'd let children climb this tree? Of course not, but the more the teacher said no, the more I wanted to do it. And it was the last day before summer break, so I knew I'd never get another chance. I came to school early, carrying a step stool along. It boosted me up to the first branch, where I could see the whole schoolyard. From there, it was a simple thing to get higher. I climbed above the top of the school, then higher, where I could see homes all around. That must have been incredible. It was. Until I fell." Ignoring my gasp, she quickly added, "I didn't fall far, but what saved me was a branch that got caught on my bloomers." "Your bloomers?" "You were hanging face down, with my dress halfway over my head and my bloomers caught on a tree branch. I didn't dare move. If the branch broke, I'd go straight to the ground. I just had to wait until someone came who could help me." I giggled, hoping she didn't think it was rude. "How long was that?" She rolled her eyes. "Well, that's the problem. I was too embarrassed to call down to anyone, and they never looked up. They walked right beneath me, going about their business. Finally, after a few close calls, I thought I'd at least better get my dress off my head. But I wiggled too much, and I fell." "Oh, no!" She started to laugh. "Oh, yes. Right as I fell, a groundskeeper was passing below, hauling a wagon of fresh dirt. I fell right into it, face first. The only thing sticking up out of the wagon were my bloomers, still perfectly white. I laughed too, enjoying the fact that because we were finally far enough from any homes, it was safe to be a little loud. Safe to enjoy being a pair of ordinary teenage girls, even if it was only for one small moment. But in wartime, laughter never seemed to last long. Only a half-kilometer down the road, we came to a field that must have been the site of a terrible battle. Ditches had been dug through cornfields, small pits of dropped seeds were now whole chunks of earth blown apart by exploded shells. It took little imagination to visualize where bodies might have fallen. Some of these soldiers, more of ours. But the Polish army must have had some luck in the battle. At the far end of the field I saw a German tank. It was camouflage green, with a tank number and black iron cross on each side. The scrapes and dents on it looked like it ran over its fair share of obstacles to get here, but it was clearly damaged. The gears were off its track, and its turret was bent. Another smile widened on my face. Esther noticed, and her tone immediately sharpened. "No, Chaya, what if no one's in it? It's obviously been abandoned. We can't sleep in a German tank. It's wrong. It's perfect. Think of what a great story this will make for our children and grandchildren one day, of the night we hid inside a weapon designed to kill us. That's not funny." I grinned over at her. "Well, it's not funny in the same way that you falling into the wagon was funny. But this comes close. Let's go." Careful to avoid making tracks where possible, I led the way toward the tank. I paused long enough to examine the exterior damage. What could have done this? I asked. Esther stood several meters behind me, reluctant to come any closer. A single mosquito carrying malaria can end a human life. It's small but deadly. I suppose if you hit the tank just right, even with something small, this can be destroyed too. But we don't need to know how to stop a tank. Maybe we will one day. My expression became stern. We have to go inside, Esther, purely for research purposes. Ignoring her protest, I turned my attention back to the tank. My first concern was how we'd get inside, but a glint of reflected moonlight showed a gap between a hatch on top of the rest of the tank. It was open. I climbed onto the track wheels in the front, using the tank's gun turret as a brace. How cold the metal was now, though it must have been hot as fire during the final battle here. When I was balanced on the platform, I leaned down to help Esther, but her arms were folded and she looked ready to run. I can't. What if someone's inside? If there's someone inside, we've already woken him, woken him up by coming this far. And on our best day, you'll never outrun his gun. She sighed, gave me a miserable half-smile, then reluctantly took my hand. I did her a favor by checking inside the hatch first. I wasn't worried about a live body down here. That wouldn't make sense on a battlefield that must have been a couple of years old. I was worried about a dead body, which the Germans sometimes left behind as a trap, with a device that would explode if anyone tried to move it. I couldn't see anything from here. It was pitch black down below. Grinning again at Esther, I took a deep breath. Then I sank myself into the darkness. Almost instantly, I landed on a metal floor contained in the upper, rotating half of the tank. The lower half would have belonged to the commander and driver. They'd have more comfortable seats than these, but up here we were surrounded by leftover weapons, an entirely different kind of comfort. I called up to Esther. "It's empty. No soldiers." "No soldiers? That's what empty means, Esther." Once she descended beside me, I sealed the hatch, allowing only a small pistol hole nearby for our air, ensuring that other than us, it would remain empty. Esther began feeling around for anything that might provide light, but found nothing. It's better this way, I told her. A light would make us a lantern out here. It'll be morning soon, then we'll have plenty of light. I can't sleep, she said, not closed up inside this terrible place. I can sleep just fine, I replied with a yawn. Get some rest. We still have a long walk ahead. Chapter 24, February 19th, 1943, Road to Warsaw. My eyes opened earlier than I wished they had, partially from the discomfort of the cramped space within the tank, but mostly because sunlight was peeking in through the pistol hole directly onto my face. Aside from being impossibly tired, I was eager to explore my surroundings. I'd never been inside a tank before, but I knew they were manned by a well-armed crew. At our strongest, Esther and I couldn't carry any of the large munition shells with us, nor would I know what to do with one if I could. But if there was a pistol hole, then there had to be pistols here too, or at least ammunition. Since we had climbed into the gunner's hatch, we were in the most likely place to find any remaining weapons if they were left behind. I stole a quick peek at Esther, who was curled up almost into a protective ball. I knew it frightened her to be in here, but it frightened her to be nearly anywhere. And besides, we were probably safer here than out in the open. The tank wasn't foolproof. That was obvious, now that I'd seen the inside of one. If someone wanted to flush us out or kill us, a gas bomb or grenade rolled into the tank's muzzle should do the trick. But I wouldn't tell Esther that. Besides, a gas bomb or grenade wouldn't be friendly, no matter where we were. At least here we were surrounded by thick metal walls and a hatch with an interior lock. I began searching quietly so as not to disturb her. Very quickly I found a compartment containing German army rations. I hoped this food wasn't packaged by any resistance members determined to add a dose of food poisoning to the German diet, but we were going to take the risk, and take the food anyway. The markings on the food package were in German, but I knew enough of the language to recognize the crackers, tinned meat, and most exciting of all, squares of chocolate. Unable to stop myself, I tore into one package and broke off half a piece for myself, then leaned back in the chair and smiled, letting it melt in my mouth. I hadn't had chocolate since the war began, and forgotten until this moment how much I missed it. With that thought, the guilt returned, this time like a lead weight inside my stomach. I hadn't needed that piece. I'd only wanted it. I had responsibilities. I hadn't needed that piece. I'd only wanted it, and I wasn't out here to satisfy my wants. I had responsibilities to literally thousands of people who would trade a limb from their body for that bite of food. What do I smell? Esther opened her eyes with a smile, and her eye zeroed in on the chocolate. I could hardly deny her what I'd just given myself, so I offered her the other half of the piece I'd eaten, except that where I popped the entire thing in my mouth, she only nibbled it from the corner, determined to make the half square last as long as possible. "Can I hate the Nazis and love their chocolate?" she asked. I grinned. Chocolate does not take sides in a war, and that is a good thing. Now that Esther was awake, we began a thorough search of the tank, opening every hatch and searching every gap inside the metal monster. Some of what we found was disgusting, a reminder that the soldiers who once operated this tank didn't get out as much as 5 grown men should have. But we found a half-used package of unused rags, and we gratefully used them to clean ourselves. Bottles of clean water, and more food than we'd be able to carry. I wanted the food, but I was still searching for ammunition. The gun I brought out of loads was fine for waving around if I wanted to look threatening, but it might also start a fight I couldn't finish. I needed bullets.